But the news was just announced that WNBA TV ratings are down more than 50% since Caitlin Clark's injury. And it was also reported that the Indiana Fever television viewership is also down over 53%. Now, I know a lot of us were expecting some sort of dip since Caitlin Clark has been out with injury, but I don't think all of us were expecting the entire viewership of the entire WNBA.
The world of sports witnessed a miracle. A league that had struggled for decades in the shadows was suddenly thrust into the brightest spotlight imaginable. The roar was deafening. Ratings were not just climbing, they were exploding. Arenas were electric, packed to the rafters with screaming fans, celebrities, and media from around the globe. It was a cultural movement, a revolution, and then, just as quickly as it began, it was over. The roar faded into a chilling silence. The viewers vanished. The energy dissipated, and the packed arenas became echoing caverns of empty seats. This wasn't just a market correction. It was a full-blown implosion, a catastrophic collapse that left everyone asking the same terrifying question. Was the WNBA's entire glittering empire built on the fragile shoulders of a single 22-year-old rookie? And did the league just stand by and watch its golden goose get cooked, revealing a dark and incompetent truth that had been lurking beneath the surface all along?
Today, is there any chance that the WNBA, that Kathy Engelbert saw some of the ratings that I'm about to show you now and said, hey, Indiana Fever, can you do us a favor? Can you do us a solid? Can you just tease a Caitlin Clark return, kind of boost these up a little bit? Can you just dangle a Caitlin Clark return in front of the fans' faces, try to boost these ratings up a little bit? There was one matchup that this league can consistently rely on to produce massive viewership numbers.
For a fleeting, brilliant period, the WNBA was the center of the universe. This phenomenon had a name: the Caitlin Clark effect. It was a tidal wave of hype and energy that lifted the entire league to heights it had never known. Before Clark, getting a WNBA game on a major network was a battle. After her arrival, her games were appointment television, commanding primetime slots on ESPN and ABC, and pulling in viewership numbers that rivaled established men's sports. We're talking 2, 3, even 4 million viewers for a regular season game, numbers that were simply science fiction just a year prior. It wasn't just TV. The on-the-ground reality was even more staggering. The Indiana Fever, once a team playing in a half-empty arena, was suddenly the hottest ticket in the country.
A shocker. Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when Uncle Casey found out that the WNBA is struggling to maintain their ratings without Caitlin Clark. To make matters worse, and this is something I have definitely noticed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially since the All-Star game, the WNBA seems to be struggling to maintain interest.
Teams were moving their home games against the Fever to massive NBA arenas just to accommodate the demand, and they were still selling out in minutes. Her jersey became the highest selling of any athlete in any sport upon its release. The league was finally breaking through the noise, capturing the attention of casual fans who had never watched a minute of women's basketball before. It felt permanent. It felt like the start of a dynasty. They were on top of the world, basking in the glow of newfound relevance and revenue. But in their celebration, they forgot the most fundamental rule of business: you must protect your most valuable asset at all costs.
About Caitlin Clark, the operative word that comes to my mind is gratitude. There's an incredible level of gratitude that should be accorded to this young lady with what she did for the sport.
How was the attendance for Team USA in the Olympics? What would it have been like if Caitlin Clark was playing on that team? Remember the first game? Look at this right here. National broadcast viewership. What are we talking about here? 1,000, what is that? 1.219? Is that the number? And the game afterwards got 485,000. So the Fever in their game against the Minnesota Lynx was 1.219 million.
The moment Caitlin Clark was sidelined with an injury, the fantasy ended and a brutal reality set in. The collapse wasn't gradual, it was immediate and catastrophic. Industry reports began to surface, each one more damning than the last. WNBA league-wide television ratings had reportedly plummeted by an astonishing 50%. The Indiana Fever, the league's flagship attraction, saw their viewership evaporate by more than 53%. To put that in perspective, imagine a blockbuster movie franchise losing over half its audience overnight. It's a commercial disaster. The vibrant, sold-out arenas that had become the league's new calling card on television reverted back to their old familiar state, seas of empty seats. The eerie silence in these venues was a stark reminder of how artificial the boom had been.
WNBA's black superstars should thank their lucky stars for the record ratings Caitlin Clark is detonating, even if new fans are mostly white fans. It doesn't matter what color eyeballs are. But the other day, I must admit, it hit me like Katie Bell Henderson telling me that's enough. I told myself it's not racist for me to like Caitlin.
The casual fans, the millions who had tuned in out of curiosity, were gone. They had come to see the Caitlin Clark show, and when the main act was no longer on stage, they simply changed the channel. The league's newfound popularity was exposed for what it was, a fragile house of cards built on a single player. And that player's absence didn't just remove a card, it blew the entire house down. But plummeting ratings and empty seats were just the symptoms of the disease. The real sickness was festering in the league's front office, where a bizarre and almost delusional narrative was being crafted.
The WNBA has a problem, and that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-poppingly.
As the WNBA's ship was visibly taking on water, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert grabbed the microphone and began telling everyone how wonderfully the voyage was going. In a series of baffling public appearances and interviews, she continued to push a narrative of unprecedented growth and incredible momentum. On the very same week that reports confirmed a 50% viewership crash, the commissioner was on national television talking about the league's bright future and expanding fan base. The disconnect was jarring. It was a level of corporate spin so extreme that it bordered on fantasy. She was the master of denial, a magician trying to distract the audience with flashy card tricks, while the entire stage behind her was engulfed in flames.
That's not a trend that the WNBA is excited about. That's a trend that Kathy Engelbert would say, hey, Fever, hey, Lynn Dunn, hey, Kelly, hey, Amber, can you guys start dangling that Caitlin Clark return like you used to do? You know, before Caitlin Clark gave a statement and you guys were hands off. Can you guys, just string them along a little bit more? We want to get these ratings back up. We want to get these numbers back.
This refusal to acknowledge the clear and present crisis infuriated fans and analysts. It wasn't just seen as optimistic, it was seen as disrespectful to the intelligence of everyone watching. The league appeared to be gaslighting its own audience, telling them not to believe their lying eyes. This created an impression of a weak, out-of-touch leadership, completely incapable of navigating a crisis because they refused to even admit a crisis existed. While the commissioner was living in a fantasy world of her own creation, the players on the court were being forced to live in a brutal and dangerous reality.
At Indiana, against the Chicago Sky, right after that game, they opened an investigation once again into the fans, where they found nothing, but the damage had already been done at that point. If some of these things happen just one time here and there, or there's one certain media personality who's just always saying these kind of things, then whatever. I feel like fans as a whole can be like, okay, whatever, this person is just a hater. But this is something that has happened over and over and over again, and over time, it starts chipping away at how much you're going to actually care and want to support an organization if they continue to do things like.
Caitlin Clark's injury wasn't a freak accident. For anyone paying attention, it felt like the grim, predictable conclusion to a season-long campaign of physical abuse. From her very first professional game, Clark was treated not as a generational talent to be protected, but as a target to be neutralized by any means necessary. She was relentlessly hip-checked, shoved to the floor off the ball, and hit with a level of aggression that often went completely uncalled by the officials. The referees seemed to operate under a bizarre, unwritten rulebook where their whistles went silent whenever Clark was involved. The league had a golden goose, an athlete single-handedly generating millions in revenue, and they allowed her to be treated like a tackling dummy night after night.
Caitlin Clark thing, man. I mean, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing what you guys have done. And then people are catching on to your tactics. You got the people on Twitter catching on to your tactics. Like, look at this right here. Look at this right here. They say ESPN didn't want to show the ratings were down from WNBA All-Star Game because Caitlin Clark did.
The negligence was mind-boggling. This failure of protection was thrown into even sharper relief with the decision to leave Clark off the Team USA Olympic roster. In a move that shocked the entire sports world, the establishment snubbed its most popular and influential player, choosing instead to stick with a roster of veterans. To the public, it looked like a petty, political move, another instance of the old guard trying to put the new star in her place. The message it sent was clear and devastating: we don't need you, and we won't protect you. And just when you thought the chaos couldn't get any worse, another one of the league's brightest new stars decided she'd had enough.
Rhodes, well, how about this? Pay us what you owe us. That looks like a ham sandwich and some Lay's tater chips right now. It's getting bad. I feel bad for Caitlin Clark. She come out and said on Sue Bird's podcast that she's feeling the pressure of not playing in these games. And that Fever Sky viewership fell off the map.
As the storm surrounding Clark's injury and the Olympic snub raged, a second, equally powerful bombshell dropped. Angel Reese, the charismatic and polarizing rookie from the Chicago Sky, abruptly left her team and stepped away from the sport mid-season. This was not just some random player taking a break. Reese was the other face of the WNBA's rookie class. Her on-court rivalry with Clark, stretching back to their college days, was one of the league's most compelling storylines. Her departure was a seismic event, signaling that the problems within the WNBA were systemic, not isolated.
Good news and some bad news for those who are fans of pretend basketball. For those who are desperate to see the WNBA succeed, even though this dump of a league can't seem to get the hell out of their own way. Now, the WNBA, they refer to these people as fans, but the rest of us, we prefer to call them the mainstream media.
It suggested a league culture that was so high pressure and toxic that it was burning out its biggest new stars before their first season was even over. Reese's exit transformed the narrative from the league is failing Caitlin Clark to the league is failing its players. The two pillars that were meant to support the WNBA's future had both crumbled in a matter of weeks, one sidelined by physical injury born from league negligence, the other stepping away for reasons that pointed to an unbearable internal environment. With its star power decimated and its leadership in denial, the people who mattered most finally began to turn on the league, the fans.
You see, this is exactly what we were talking about. WNBA All-Star ratings are in for 2025, and it is down 40%. 40% from last year. That's bad. That is really bad. We already watched the ticket prices drop by more than 50% because Caitlin Clark was not playing. This is bad news for the WNBA.
The fan backlash was not a quiet grumble. It was a digital roar of outrage. Social media platforms, which had so recently been filled with celebratory clips and praise, became a toxic wasteland of anger and frustration aimed directly at the league. Every official WNBA post, no matter how trivial, was hijacked by a flood of comments from furious fans. Protect your players became a rallying cry. Fan-made video compilations showcasing dozens of uncalled fouls against Clark went viral, viewed millions of times. Memes featuring empty arenas and Kathy Engelbert fiddling while Rome burned became ubiquitous. The fans felt utterly betrayed.
All of you guys can sit there and say, oh, you guys are just trying to uplift one player. Oh, the league is more than one. I agree, the league is more than one player. It's more than one good basketball player. But is there more than one player that moves the tide? No.
They had bought the tickets, the jerseys, and the subscriptions. They had invested their time and their passion, believing they were part of a historic movement. Now they felt like they had been scammed, suckered into supporting a league that seemed determined to self-destruct through a lethal combination of incompetence and arrogance. The WNBA wasn't just losing the casuals anymore, it was now alienating its most dedicated supporters, the very people it needed to survive. The league was bleeding viewers, money, and its most precious commodity, goodwill, all of which leads to one terrifying existential question. For weeks, the league's powerful media partners like ESPN had acted as its biggest cheerleaders. They rode the Caitlin Clark wave, dedicating entire segments to her highlights and celebrating the league's record-breaking numbers. They were part of the hype machine, but when the collapse happened, the truth became too big and too ugly to ignore. Suddenly, these same sports shows were forced to report on the catastrophic 50% ratings drop. The on-air personalities who just weeks earlier were anointing Clark as the savior of the sport now had to awkwardly discuss the league's implosion. The official WNBA spin machine was sputtering and breaking down in real time. They could no longer control the narrative. The story had become a runaway train of negativity, and even their most loyal media allies had to jump on board or risk losing all credibility with their audience. The league was being exposed on all fronts, its carefully crafted image of growth shattering under the weight of undeniable facts. But while the media narrative was crumbling, an even more urgent crisis was unfolding on the balance sheets. The financial fallout was just as brutal as the ratings disaster. Before the injury, tickets to see the Indiana Fever were a golden commodity. On secondary markets like StubHub, nosebleed seats were selling for hundreds of dollars, while courtside seats commanded thousands. Scalpers were having a field day. After the injury, that market didn't just cool off, it completely froze over. Suddenly, those same tickets were being sold for less than the price of a stadium hot dog. Entire rows of premium seats were available for pocket change. It was a financial bloodbath for resellers, and more importantly, a humiliating look for the league. This wasn't just about one team, either. The Clark bump that had raised ticket prices and attendance across the entire league vanished overnight. The damage went far beyond the box office. Merchandise sales, once booming, stalled. Potential sponsors who had been lining up to get a piece of the action were surely second-guessing their investment. The league's failure to protect its main attraction had created an existential financial crisis, jeopardizing not just this season's profits, but the league's long-term ability to negotiate lucrative television and sponsorship deals. This bleeding was a direct result of one core failure, a failure made even more shocking when you look at how their big brother league operates. Let's ask a simple question. What would the NBA do? If a rookie with Caitlin Clark's popularity and impact entered the NBA, they would be treated like a priceless work of art. The league would immediately issue memos to referees. The slightest, overly aggressive touch would draw a whistle. That player would be protected at all costs. Because the NBA understands a simple truth, their stars are the product. You don't let your billion-dollar assets get treated like tackling dummies. Look at how the league protects LeBron James, Stephen Curry, or any of its marquee players. They have created a culture of officiating that ensures their biggest draws stay on the court and stay healthy. The WNBA, on the other hand, did the exact opposite. They watched their generational talent get physically abused and did nothing. It's not just incompetence, it's business malpractice. The blueprint for success was right there, in the same corporate family. All they had to do was copy the model. Instead, they chose to ignore it, treating their biggest star like a disposable prop in a demolition derby. This shocking contrast reveals that the WNBA's crisis wasn't an accident, it was a choice. So where does this leave the WNBA? It leaves them at the center of a crisis entirely of their own making. They were handed a once-in-a-generation talent, a player who single-handedly made them the most talked-about league in sports. They had the world's attention, a legion of new fans, and a clear path to unprecedented success. But instead of capitalizing on it, they were plagued by a perfect storm of failures, a refusal to protect their stars, a leadership completely detached from reality, and a fan base that felt utterly betrayed. The story of the 2024 WNBA season became a cautionary tale of a golden opportunity squandered. The league was given a winning lottery ticket. The question everyone is asking now is, did they just tear it up in front of the whole world, and will they ever be trusted with another one?